If your God and your religious tradition was passed down to you, you are privileged. If you grew up in a hereditary or generational priesthood, you are privileged. If you had formal training in your craft from a coven, a house, an elay, a group, you are privileged. If every time you made a mistake, all you had to do was confess or do a prescription or an abo or a sacrifice and the problem will go away, you're privileged. If you have someone that you can call up at any given time to advise you on which way to go, what to do, what not to do, what path to walk, what to stay away from, how to avoid certain pitfalls, you're privileged. These are just a few examples of what I would consider a privileged witch or a privileged spiritualist or a privileged whatever, right? Hereditary, witchcraft, generational priesthood, initiation into covens or groups, being part of these groups since birth, etc. These are all behaviors, activities, things that you may not even have had in your control, but are considered part of an inherited type of privilege. So why am I bringing this up? What does this have to do with spirituality and our practices and all that? Well, there is something to be said that this idea of classism, this idea of rank, this idea of elitism, this idea of privilege is very prevalent within our community, and we should talk about it. Now, I am not one of those pull yourself up by your bootstrap type people. I do not believe in that American sort of lie. At the end of the day, we need each other. Community is necessary. No man is an island. No one does anything on their own. However, when it comes to spirituality, there's a few pieces that we do need to take into consideration. So since our spiritual practices, despite whether or not they are part of a communal tradition, is still a very solitary practice, right? Because even in a communal context, there are going to be individual subjective experience. Where the difference lies in a lot of these privileged environments is sort of the dismissal of these individualized subjective experiences, because if it didn't happen in the community, if the community did not bear witness, then it wasn't real. And that is where I would disagree, okay? And so again, I'm not coming from this perspective of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and that your spiritual practices is yours alone, and so therefore screw all communal things. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I believe in the importance of community. I believe in the importance of tradition. I believe in the importance of having wisdom being passed down, either through books or through oral tradition, because otherwise it would be lost, and that being part of a culture is vital. Absolutely. We'll never take that away. But where my argument lies is in the disservice we do towards solitary practitioners. We do them a disservice when we say to them, your grit, your determination, your discipline, your ruthlessness with regards to you, to finding who you are and the core and to knowing the truth is not valid because it's not done through a community. That is a problem. That is a dismissal of a lot of work that many solitary practitioners have and have put into their practice. We are dismissing the fact that because they are solitary and do not have anyone to call to course correct them, do not have a community to call upon for extra energy and resources. We are dismissing the fact that they have to rely on the scientific method and on trial and error. And that alone makes them a fucking gangster, an absolute beast. Because not only do they have to learn these things through trial and error, but if they fuck up, they also have to deal with those consequences alone. And yet, to you guys, that may look like, wow, that's taking the long route, or wow, that's really placing a lot of unnecessary obstacles in your path, or wow, that really puts a delay in your progress because now you got to overcome. Okay. But they weren't rescued. They didn't confess something in a box and poof, it was gone, and they can just move on to the next thing. They didn't have a family book that's been passed down for 5 generations to refer to get them out of their little quandary, right? No. They had to bear it, grin and bear it. Knee deep, elbows in, knuckles white, locked in. They had to bear it. Right? So these are pieces of the solitary practice that I really feel like we need to give more respect to. There are solitary practitioners out here today who will wipe the floor with these generational witches, these generational practitioners, these priesthoods of family lineage, wipe the floor with them with regards to what they can do with their magic, what they can do with spirits, and what they can do with their abilities. Wipe the floor. But because they didn't go through a route that is popular, trendy, recognized, acknowledged as being better, we have to dismiss them altogether. I unfortunately have to disagree. I'm a huge advocate for my fellow solitary mystics, solitary spiritualists, solitary brujas and practitioners. I see you. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's not. It really isn't. So while some people get initiated by having suffering being inflicted upon them, you are being initiated by trial and error, by the suffering caused through trial and error. It's the same shit. It's the same shit. But one is in a controlled environment. One is saying, I'm going to inflict suffering upon you that I can then remove once I deem you worthy enough to have gone to the next level. And the other says, you're going to just have suffering because you're going to fuck up at some point. You're going to fuck up at some point and you're going to suffer for it. And so just be prepared for that. And that could look a lot of different ways. And there's no one there to relieve you of that suffering except you. I'm sorry, but that creates a type of practitioner that, I mean, look, maybe I'm biased, but I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. And solitary practitioners are no joke. They are not ones to be reckoned with. At least the ones that actually did the work. Not the ones who say, oh, I was born this way and I, started like learning about, no. I'm talking about people since they were very little who said, oh shit, I'm different. And actively worked towards that and trying to understand that day in and day out because they knew they were different and did the work. That's a different breed. Anyway, I just needed to say that. Love you guys. This is The Magical Solution. I'm Leilani, and this is how we grow.